What if the most important key to understanding the Mule in Foundation Season 3 isn't hidden in his terrifying powers, but in Bayta, a character who seems almost ordinary at first glance? Could their stories be secretly connected? And if so, what does that mean for the future of the entire galaxy? To understand whether Bayta might be connected to the Mule, we need to step back and look at who these two figures really are in the world of Foundation. Bayta, as introduced in Season 3, is not shown as a warrior or someone with great power. Instead, she is presented as someone with intelligence, empathy, and the ability to see through lies. She represents a very different type of strength, one rooted in perception and courage rather than violence or control. Her role in the Foundation storyline may not feel massive at first, but it carries hints of something much larger. Characters like Bayta often hold the thread that ties together bigger events, and in the Foundation universe, no detail is ever too small to ignore. The Mule, on the other hand, is anything but subtle. In the original Asimov novels, the Mule is one of the most dangerous and unpredictable forces ever to appear in the galaxy. He has the power to control emotions, bending people's will to his own, and by doing so, he disrupts the carefully designed Seldon Plan, a grand blueprint for humanity's future. In Apple's adaptation, the Mule is being set up as a central figure in Season 3, and his presence already casts a shadow over the unfolding story. The Mule's strength is not just in his psychic domination, but in how he represents chaos, where Bayta embodies insight and choice. The Mule represents control and destiny twisting out of order. When you place Bayta and the Mule side by side, their contrast immediately stands out. Bayta is human, vulnerable, and free-thinking, while the Mule is almost inhuman in the way he strips freedom from others. This opposition raises the question, are they being built up as natural rivals, two sides of the same coin, foundations? Storytelling often uses this kind of balanced characters who mirror or counter one another, shaping the galaxy's fate through their conflict. Even if Bayta does not seem like a match for the Mule's overwhelming powers, her importance may not lie in strength, but in being the one person who can see him clearly and act in a way others cannot. What makes this even more fascinating is the difference between Asimov's original books and the Apple TV adaptation. In the novels, Bayta plays a direct and shocking role in the Mule story. But the show has already taken liberties, reimagining characters and timelines to fit a more visual and dramatic format. This opens the door for speculation. Will Bayta's connection to the Mule remain faithful to the original, or will Apple twist it into something new? By setting Bayta up as a figure of intuition and quiet resilience, the show may be building toward a clash where her humanity is the only thing strong enough to challenge the Mule's power. Bayta's journey in Foundation Season 3 is not about being the strongest fighter, the most skilled strategist, or the one who commands vast armies. Instead, her story is about something far rarer in the Foundation universe, the ability to notice, to question, and to trust her instincts even when the world around her demands blind obedience. From her first appearance, Bayta is drawn as a character who carries quiet strength. She doesn't try to dominate others, nor does she seek out positions of authority. Instead, she is someone who listens, observes, and looks beneath the surface of every situation. And it is precisely these qualities that make her more powerful than she appears. In the galaxy of Foundation, where great minds like Hari Seldon design plans that span centuries, and where emperors rule entire star systems, someone like Bayta could easily be overlooked. But storytelling in Foundation has always been about how the smallest figures, the most unassuming individuals, can alter the course of destiny. Think of Gul Dornick at the very beginning, an ordinary mathematician. His choices echoed across generations. Bayta's arc feels built on that same principle. She is a reminder that while grand strategies and empires matter, it is often the personal, human choices that decide the fate of millions. What makes Bayta stand out is her deep sense of empathy. Unlike characters who rely on logic alone, Bayta notices emotions, motivations, and subtle tensions others miss. This is especially important in a world dominated by figures like the Mule, who manipulates emotions as his greatest weapon. If everyone else becomes blind to what is real because of the Mule's psychic influence, then a character like Bayta, grounded in human observation and instinct, becomes uniquely important. Her sensitivity, which might otherwise be seen as a weakness, could transform into the one resistance the Mule cannot easily break. Another aspect of Bayta's arc lies in her moral courage. While others in the Foundation universe are driven by ambition, survival, or fear of failure, Bayta shows the courage to make choices that are not self-serving. She is willing to act even when the consequences are unclear, to take responsibility, even when she knows it could cost her dearly. In stories like Foundation, where entire civilizations are shaped by prediction and inevitability, someone who refuses to be a predictable piece on the chessboard becomes dangerous. And Bayta, with her unassuming resolve, may be one of the biggest disruptions to the path laid out by Seldon's Plan. It is also worth noting how Bayta represents a counterbalance to the theme of inevitability that runs through Foundation. The Seldon Plan predicts humanity's path with mathematical certainty, but the Mule proves that individuals with extraordinary abilities can throw the entire plan into chaos. Bayta's role seems to suggest another layer, that ordinary individuals, without great powers or special gifts, can also shift destiny. Her arc is not about destiny being shattered by force, but about destiny being reshaped by choice. This places her in a unique position. She doesn't oppose the Mule as a rival of equal power, but as a figure who can undo his certainty through a single, deeply human decision. In Apple's adaptation, Bayta also symbolizes a bridge between the audience and the vast, often overwhelming galaxy of Foundation. She is relatable in a way that gods, emperors, and mathematical prophets are not. Her doubts, her small acts of bravery, her quiet defiance, these are things viewers can recognize in themselves. This relatability makes her all the more important to the narrative, because when Bayta stands against the Mule, it will not feel like a battle of giants, but like the struggle of an ordinary person against an unstoppable force. And that is exactly what makes it dramatic, emotional, and unforgettable. As her arc develops, it becomes clear that Bayta is not simply a side character woven into the larger story. She is a test of the Foundation's greatest themes: free will against control, the ordinary against the extraordinary, and humanity against destiny. Through her, the story asks a fundamental question: can the smallest voice in the galaxy still matter when the weight of history seems already decided? And if the answer is yes, then Bayta's connection to the Mule will not just be a subplot, but the heart of Season 3's conflict. The Mule is not just another villain in Foundation, he is the fracture in the story's very foundation. While Hari Seldon built the plan to map the rise and fall of empires for centuries, the Mule exists as the unexpected variable, the flaw in mathematics, the whisper of chaos that no prediction could foresee. His very existence asks one of the most haunting questions in the Foundation universe. If a single being can bend billions of minds to his will, what hope does free will have against inevitability? Unlike emperors who command power through armies, titles, or fear, the Mule is terrifying because his strength is invisible and inescapable. He does not need weapons to conquer, because his gift is lodged in the most private part of every person there: emotions. With a simple exertion of his psychic ability, he can drain courage from a soldier, inspire devotion in an enemy, or twist a leader into his puppet. Entire civilizations can collapse without a single shot fired. In this way, the Mule represents something more than a tyrant. He is the embodiment of control itself, reshaping humanity not by logic or force, but by altering the very essence of who people are. What makes him such a powerful enigma is that he appears, at first, almost unremarkable. In the original novels, the Mule hides behind the guise of a performer, a clownish figure, underestimated and dismissed until it is too late. This contradiction, his ordinary appearance masking world-breaking powers, makes him even more unsettling. It reminds us that the most dangerous threats often arrive unnoticed, disguised as harmless, until their shadow covers everything. In Apple's adaptation, we still do not know exactly how the Mule will be presented, but the trailers suggest a figure who is both commanding and mysterious, a presence felt long before he even appears on screen. His legend arrives before his face, and that alone heightens the tension. The Mule is also unique because he disrupts not only the Seldon Plan but the entire theme of predictability and foundation. Hari Seldon's plan is built on the laws of psychohistory, the science that predicts mass human behavior. Yet the Mule, with his singular power, becomes an exception. He is proof that history can be bent not just by the collective, but by a single unpredictable individual. In this way, the Mule represents the idea that even the most brilliant systems can be undone by the chaos of human nature. He is not just a character, but a challenge to the very philosophy of foundation, an argument that no plan, no matter how perfect, can account for every possibility. Another layer to the Mule's enigma is the emotional reaction he provokes. Unlike cold emperors or rational scientists, the Mule thrives on manipulating the deepest parts of the human heart. He robs people of their ability to love freely, to resist with courage, or to despair naturally. In doing so, he creates a world that looks obedient on the surface, but is hollow beneath. His power strips away individuality, reducing billions to extensions of his own will. Yet this raises a disturbing paradox. If people under the Mule's influence act with joy, devotion, or loyalty, are they still suffering? If they feel content, even if forced, does it matter that their emotions are not truly theirs? These are the kinds of questions the Mule forces both the characters and the audience to wrestle with, and it is what makes his presence so haunting. In Foundation Season 3, the mystery deepens because the Mule is not yet fully revealed. The story places him in the shadows, building suspense around when and how he will step into the spotlight. This is a clever narrative move, because by delaying his full appearance, the show lets his legend grow larger than life. Every whispered mention, every fragment of foreshadowing builds a sense of inevitability. He is coming, and when he arrives, nothing will remain the same. The Mule's enigma lies not only in his power but in his timing, striking precisely when the galaxy feels most stable, tearing open the illusion of safety. When compared with Bayta, his contrast becomes even sharper. Where Bayta embodies choice, empathy, and clarity, the Mule symbolizes inevitability, domination, and blindness. He is not only her opposite, but perhaps her destiny, the test that will prove whether an ordinary person's will can stand against extraordinary control. The enigma of the Mule is not just what he can do, but whether anyone can resist him. If Bayta is that person, her arc gains a significance that echoes across the galaxy. If not, then the Mule becomes the symbol of a universe where no choice is truly free. The Mule is therefore not simply a villain to be defeated. He is a question made flesh. He asks whether human beings are capable of holding on to themselves when faced with absolute power. And that question will define not only Season 3, but the very heart of Foundation's ongoing story. The most intriguing question in Foundation Season 3 is not simply what the Mule will do, but who will stand against him, and how. That is where Bayta steps into the spotlight, not as an obvious warrior, but as a character whose very presence suggests she may hold the key to the Mule's downfall. The connections between Bayta and the Mule are not loud or obvious, but when you start piecing together their traits, their roles, and even the echoes of Asimov's original story, patterns begin to emerge that feel too deliberate to ignore. One possible connection lies in contrast itself. Bayta and the Mule are built as opposites. One represents the vulnerability and choice of ordinary humanity, while the other embodies overwhelming control and domination. This opposition is not accidental. Foundation storytelling has always leaned on balance, on forces that seem destined to collide because they embody opposing truths. The Mule bends emotions to erase freedom, while Beta's defining quality is her ability to see through illusion and hold onto her humanity. If the Mule symbolizes the loss of individuality, then Beta becomes the reminder that even one free choice can disrupt absolute control. Their connection, therefore, might not be one of shared origin, but of destiny, two figures who are inevitable mirrors, drawn to each other because their very existence challenges the other. Another connection may come through adaptation choices. In Asimov's novels, Bayta is the one who ultimately brings the Mule's expansion to a halt, though not through strength or power, but through an act of unexpected courage and clarity. Apple's adaptation has already shifted timelines and character arcs, but it has also shown a tendency to preserve the thematic weight of Asimov's characters, even when the details change. This suggests that Bayta's link to the Mule will be preserved in some form, though it may arrive in a way that surprises even readers of the books. Perhaps she will discover the Mule's secret before anyone else. Perhaps her ordinary insight will pierce the mask that others cannot see through. Or perhaps the show will weave an entirely new twist, tying her bloodline, her choices, or her relationships directly into the Mule's rise. The fact that Apple has kept Bayta in the story at this moment feels deliberate, as though she is being positioned for a confrontation too crucial to be coincidence. There is also a symbolic layer to consider. The Mule thrives by bending love, loyalty, and trust to his will. Bayta, however, embodies genuine loyalty and genuine love. This sets up a collision that is not only external, but internal. If the Mule manipulates emotions to bind people to him, Bayta may stand as the one person whose heart cannot be manipulated, whose loyalty cannot be stolen. In storytelling terms, this creates dramatic tension. The Mule, who is undefeatable because he controls emotions, may find himself undone by someone who refuses to be controlled at all. Their connection, then, is the collision of false love and true love, false loyalty and true loyalty, a struggle that goes deeper than politics or empires, cutting straight into the core of what makes us human, foreshadowing in Season 3 hints at this dynamic. While the trailers and promotional material do not reveal the full scope of Bayta's role, the subtle focus on her reactions, her doubts, and her quiet strength suggests that she is being groomed for something significant. The Mule's legend looms in whispers, while Bayta is framed as the listener, the observer, the one paying attention to what others ignore. This narrative rhythm suggests a connection waiting to ignite, the Mule shaping the galaxy with overwhelming control. Bayta watching closely from the edges until the moment she steps in with the one action no one expects. It is also worth considering that their connection may not be only adversarial. Some fan theories suggest Bayta could be linked to the Mule by bloodline, or that their paths may intersect in ways that make her both his rival and his reflection. This would fit Apple's pattern of adding layers of personal drama to Asimov's vast, abstract ideas. A blood connection, or even a hidden bond of fate, would give their inevitable confrontation not just cosmic weight, but personal stakes. Whether or not the show takes this path, the possibility adds to the sense of mystery surrounding their connection. Ultimately, the most powerful connection between Bayta and the Mule lies in the idea of inevitability versus choice. The Mule's rise feels unstoppable, the breaking of Seldon's perfect predictions. But Bayta's role reminds us that even when the galaxy seems bound by fate, an individual choice, one small act of defiance, can change everything. The show seems to be setting her up not as a soldier in a battle, but as the human heart that resists, the reminder that control is never complete as long as one free will remains. And that is why Bayta and the Mule, though so different, are bound together in Season 3. One represents the cage, and the other represents the key.